The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus told a parable to his disciples. Can one blind guide another? Surely both will fall into a pit. The disciple is not superior to his teacher. The fully trained disciple will always be like his teacher. Why do you observe the splinter in your brother or sister's eye and never notice the plank in your own? How can you say to your sister or brother, let me take out the splinter that is in your eye, when you cannot see the plank in your own eye? Hypocrite, take the plank out of your own eye first, and then you will see clearly enough to take out the splinter that is in your sister or brother's eye. There is no sound tree that produces rotten fruit, nor again a rotten tree that produces sound fruit. For every tree can be told by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorns, nor gather grapes from brambles. A good person draws what is good from the store of goodness of their heart, and a bad person draws what is bad from the store of badness. For a man's words flow out from what fills the heart. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Father.
We welcome our catechumens, candidates who are entering into your most intense preparation as you enter into the season of Lent towards the sacrament of initiation. Rest assured of our prayers for you this morning. My dear friends, the past weeks, as we follow the walk with Jesus, he's been intensely speaking about relationships. It's all about the human connection. We started off with the Beatitudes for the Sermon on the Mount, the Sermon on the Plain. And Jesus spoke about the whole summary of the gospel. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the humble. Blessed are when someone persecutes you and calls you all sorts of names. And the litany is there. It's what we call the marrow, the crux of the gospel. And everything that you need to live in your Christian life is just mirrored in the Beatitudes. Last week we found ourselves one of the most challenging words of Jesus, love of enemies. Love your enemies. Forgive those who persecute you. Hold on to someone who is moving away from you. If someone hits you on the right, offer your left. That's what we call the paradox of Christian life. Totally the opposite in contrast of what we believe in the world today. Today, Jesus takes us to something which is, I believe, to my heart, something close to many of us in our lives. Sometimes I fall into this trap. It's called self-righteousness. Self-righteousness. It's a little kind of thing that starts very small, but after a period of time, it spreads into your human behavior. And you cannot see the weakness of oneself, but you're fast to pick on the faults of others. It's very fast. You begin to condemn, you begin to judge, you begin to label, you begin to isolate people around you. Self-righteousness. And sometimes when we throw words, it can be very sharp. It can be very painful to someone, especially when you are close to that person. It happens in a marriage. It happens in a family life. It happens in a parish community. It happens in society. Self-righteousness. Jesus had to struggle with this with the Pharisees and scribes, because the words were what I call cynical remarks, cynicism. Maybe this morning when you woke up to go for Mass, someone would have just said, oh ma, you're going for Mass. You know, you hope to be holier. Cynical remarks that just throws you off. And sometimes you wonder, where is it coming from? Why is it such words that just hurts and breaks a person and shatters the whole life of that person? And the sad part is, someone who's self-righteous cannot see their weakness. And that is why Jesus, why do you look at the splinter in someone's eye when you can't see the plank within yourself? They can't. They find it so hard. And when you do address it to them, they become defensive. They become very defensive and say, why are you judging me now? You know, whatever statements that is made is never constructive. It's always destructive to someone's life. You find it very often. Self-righteousness. And that was the subject that Jesus was trying to address today. And these self-righteousness that we speak of today is always seen in words. When we throw words, because Jesus tells us again and again in the last words of today's gospel, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Apa yang ada dalam isi hati di melimpah, mencurah dalam perbualan percakapan kita. From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. It's all within us. It's just a reservoir of all these emotions of anger, bitterness, hatred, envy, jealousy, resentment. It's all stored up. And it takes a moment to trigger you, and then you just throw it out. And you just tell yourself, I just get it out with me. And you throw all those words from the abundance of your heart, and it just comes out from the lips of your words. And as I've said before, you have no idea how those sharp words, how those bitter words can sometimes break a person in life. I've seen this a couple of times. Yesterday, I just mentioned it to the parish yesterday when I was with a family and we were having a conversation. And we were in the restaurant and one of the waiters brought in the tray of drinks and she accidentally spilled it on the table. And at once, the man of the house, I would say, turned to the waitress and says, all that you needed to say with the words. And that waitress just broke down in front of all of us. It takes a split second to destroy a human person. You have no idea what you have just done. Sometimes, it's just like, you take a glass of water and you fill it to the brim of the water and you sit down and you keep knocking the table and you will never realize at a split of a second, whatever's in that water, in that cup, will just overflow. When everything is okay, it's okay. But when you change the emotions within you, everything in you just comes out. It takes someone to trigger you. Just take a moment when you're on the road and you're having a nice, cool drive and someone cuts into your lane. And then for a moment you realize the words that have just come out of your lips. Gosh. And your son looks at you and says, Daddy, what's that words, Daddy? From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. My dear friends, one more time, Jesus says, you will know a person by the fruits of the life. Because Jesus gives a simple analogy. A tree is known by its fruit. I've seen this in my discussion with people, even among priests. I'm not afraid to say this. When you sit down and you have a conversation and says, my gosh, where is this coming from? What's happening inside that person? Because a tree will tell you the fruits, and the fruits will tell you the tree. That's all. A pear is a pear, a fig is a fig. A grapefruit is a grapefruit. You can't have two differences between a tree and a fruit. And when you encounter someone for the longest time of your life and you wonder, wow, what's happened to this person? Because the tree will tell you the fruit. And all you have to do is just taste and see that the Lord is good. Galatians 5:22 tells us the fruits of the Spirit, of love, of peace, of joy, of love, forgiveness, patience. It's all there. So sometimes you wonder where it's coming from. What's happening with you? That's the invitation of today's gospel readings today. The invitation is simply this: examine yourself. Take a moment to look at yourself and ask yourself, what's happening inside me? How often have I been saying this? What's triggering me in these moments of my emotion with my words? This self-righteousness that's in me, this self-defensive that I pick on, the kind of words that I utter, the agony of my bitterness and resentment and envy and jealousy, of anger. When I begin to sit with someone and begin to say things that are uncharitable, that are unkind to someone. It saddens to realize that all of us go through this. To understand this whole gospel text and readings today, we are about to enter into Lent in a couple of days. It's just around the bend. And Lent is not about anything else, but it's all about self-awareness. That's all Lent is. Lent is a time you sit down and ask yourself, what is it that I need to take back from my life? I'm going to share with you a secret today, but I'm not going to give you the whole secret because I'm going to leave you with some homework today. It's in the first reading. It's in the book of Sirach, the book of Ecclesiasticus. The book of Sirach gives you 3 ways, I'm going to repeat, 3 ways that you could examine your conversation and your speech. That's the word of Sirach. The way one is able to examine the speech. It's in the first reading. The first thing Sirach tells us is, begin to sift your words very carefully. He tells us that from the book of Ecclesiasticus. Try to sift and say, I shouldn't use this word today. It's not rewarding, it's not helpful in the conversation. Try to separate from the good and the bad, from what is rewarding and what is not rewarding. That's the first thing Sirach tells us. Take time before you speak to slowly sift. That's awareness. Some call this mindfulness. To begin aware of, okay, I shouldn't this. I need the patience not to say this. The second thing that Sirach tells us is, examine the roots of where the word is coming from. What's triggering you to say that words? Why is it that only of this person that I'm always using this word at? Begin to examine the roots of that word. That's what Sirach tells us today. The third way, that's your homework. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to invite you to find yourself reading the book of Sirach today. It's in the first reading. 3 ways to examine your conversations and dialogue. I left you with 2. Sift the words, examine the roots, and the third is your little homework to do. Find time to sit with the book of Sirach, the book of Ecclesiasticus. My dear sisters and brothers, we enter into Lent. Lent is not about fasting from ice cream and TV screens. It's not about anything else. Lent is all about relationships. It's about the other. That's all Lent is. It's about the spiritual works of mercy. It's about the corporal works of mercy. It's always about the other. It has nothing to do about yourself. It's not about losing weight. It's not going vegetarian. It's nothing about that. It's always about someone in a relationship. That's Lent. Let us begin this day and this week as we step into this whole self-awareness of what it is to step out of self-righteousness and to examine, because from the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak.